Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So we're here doing a little bit of training in Texas, and that's how we met. How did you get started in aviation?
Okay, well, I actually got started in aviation as an engineer.
Yeah.
And I was an aerospace engineer, aero loads engineer, just making sure that the wings and flaps and slats don't fly off the airplane. And I was flying on my evenings and weekends.
Yeah.
Little FBO, flying a 172, getting my ratings.
Nice.
Yeah. Mostly around, like in the Pacific Northwest. So, going over to Friday Harbor, Orcas Island, if some of the viewers know where that is.
Nice. And that's, you were doing that for who?
That was learning to fly.
No, the engineering.
Oh yeah, I was working for Boeing at that time.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
So you're the guy who makes sure the Boeing wings don't rip off the door plugs.
I'm not the guy. I'm one of many.
Okay. Right.
See, that's the thing. When you're younger, you think, oh, I'm going to become an engineer. I'm going to become a pilot. I'll be like the guy. But you're really just one of many that make the airspace and aviation system safe.
Yeah. So how did you get into that? Did you always want to be involved in aviation? I
want to be a pilot and an engineer. I think the engineer thing happened first.
Yeah.
Because of like financial considerations and it was an easy way to make money first without having to scrape by and like eat ramen.
Fair enough.
I'm sure people are familiar with that.
Oh yeah, the struggle. If you didn't come up between the 2021 to 2024 boom,
right?
Then you probably know the ramen.
And in fact, I was able to. I kind of missed the whole downturn. Yeah. Because I started out as an engineer in 2007, 2008, and I kind of missed that whole housing market fueled downturn. Yeah. And then it was kind of picking up right as I was getting my ratings, and after I got my commercial and was ready to get out and start flying professionally, it was just kind of picking up right then. Around the 2014, 2015 time frame.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So when COVID hit, did you have a significant downturn there?
Yeah. So COVID was interesting. So in 2016, after flying aerial survey and flying up in the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta for UDAIR, represent. You guys know what I'm talking about. After that, I was an airline pilot for Horizon Air, and during the pandemic, it was great. There were there's three different phases during the pandemic. First phase was what I like to call the honeymoon period, where we got first class everywhere. We got like all the wine and cheese, not the wine and cheese, the fruit and cheese platters that we wanted. Yeah. All the deadheads and jump seats were like first class seating because nobody was on the plane, and the flights were still operating. Yeah. And then they're like, this is going to be a little bit more longer term. So they started canceling the flights, and that was the part that I didn't like. Yeah. And so there were some people who voluntarily took some leaves of absence, and they got some reduced pay for that. Fortunately, at our airline, it never turned into furloughs or anything. Yeah. And then third phase was when everybody came roaring back. Yep. And then the travel started coming back, and then they started reducing the restrictions, but we still had to wear masks on board and everything. So that was like phase 3, and I guess we're like in phase 4 now. It's just like whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, full recovery there. Yeah, you had domestic travel exploded, right? Like as soon as any restrictions were lifted. Right. And there were a couple airlines that bet on that, but regional airlines inherently were well poised to benefit from domestic travel.
I think that's true. Smaller planes, shorter flights, and in fact, there was even some like pulling back on mainline and and I guess not upgauging, but filling regional flights to higher capacity.
Yeah. So instead of going over to Europe 3 or 4 times a day from a single base,
which I understand is a little different than the way it usually works. They try to really make their money on the mainline flights under regular circumstances, really get the load factors high, and then they're willing to just bleed money on the regional flights because they're just feeding the main line. That's my understanding.
Yeah, it's a hub and spoke model traditionally.
So it's kind of the inversion during the pandemic. So that's Goldilocks honeymoon period for about 2 months there. March, April was pretty cool. Not pretty cool, but like cool for the people who happen to be essential workers.
Silver linings.
Right.
So I think we skipped over
we did.
what I typically start with, which is what are your qualifications?
ATP multi, curiously not ATP single, commercial single, and private float plane.
Sick.
Private seaplane, yeah.
Single engine
seat, yeah.
And how about tailwheel?
No tailwheel, not a flight instructor either.
You flew at Ute.
I know.
You were an Alaska bush pilot and didn't even get your...
This is why I don't call myself a bush pilot. I don't fly tailwheel and I don't fly off airport.
To be fair, I don't think I think bush pilot was an era that's kind of,
Yeah, bush pilot era is gone, and even, the people who get closest to that are, people who land on glaciers with big fat tundra tires, tail wheel,
out there on the gravel
landing
strips.
upslope, taking off downslope.
So where did you do your flight training? You did your flight training in the Pacific Northwest?
I did, my flight training at a place called Regal Air. I know there's also a Regal Air up in Alaska, but this is the lower 48 Regal Air at Painfield. So it was kind of cool. Big airport, Class Delta airport, kind of right near all the like Whidbey Island and Orcas Island and stuff. But had a great flight instructor. She was like an S&C engineer at Boeing.
S&C?
Stability and control.
Oh, okay.
So her specialty was like working on pilot-induced oscillations and stuff.
Yeah. Making sure the whole aft section doesn't rip off.
Right. Exactly. So it was great. It was like a beautiful place to train.
Nice.
Close to work. Reasonably priced. I tried doing my training in a 152. I was just too big for that. It just wasn't comfortable, so I did it in a 172, but it's not the cheapest, I guess, way to do it, but that's how I did it.
And you've self-funded all of that?
I did, yeah. So I deliberately saved up my money. I didn't chip away at it, and I think that was good advice that I got from some other pilots. If I would have chipped away at it, it probably would have taken much longer.
Absolutely.
I did, don't get me wrong, I did start to run out of money near the end. But I still kind of saved up what I thought I needed. And it was good. It was financially, it was very, very smooth that way. The thing is though, I kind of delayed my flight training for a while. So I went to college. I worked as an engineer for, what was it, a solid 2 years before I started flight training. So I was paying down student loans and saving up my money for flight training. I was kind of, I guess, an aviation late bloomer, but just as the way the plan worked out.
We've had quite a few aviation late bloomers on the podcast, and that strategy of saving up and then going whole hog for it is something we've talked about on the podcast, and it's something I'm a huge advocate of. I've had a lot of friends or acquaintances say, I'm just going to pay for it as I go, and that's financially, it's extremely inefficient, because when you go back in after a week or God forbid after a month and you do your next flight, you're rehashing at the bare minimum 50% of your last lesson, and so you're doing that every time, whereas if you can get any given rating done in 2 weeks. If you go whole hog for any one of the given ratings and you have all the necessary prereqs, you have your written done, and you go whole hog for it and the weather's decent, then you can get it done, and it's way cheaper to do it that way. So saving up like that is just absolutely. How long from zero to hero? From 0 hours to commercial, say?
Oh, I was gonna say, like, what type of hero? So the private was like, I'd say it was like a good 6 months or something. After I got my private, I took some time to just kind of like fly around for a little bit. Just kind of enjoy the privilege of having it. Then I got my float plane rating, which was super cool. A little bit silly of me though, because if I would have gotten my float rating after the commercial, you know, whatever. So that's why I still only have my my private float, because I never did it after I got my commercial. Stuff was going so fast.
So for those unfamiliar, a float check ride is the same. I think it's to the same standards.
You don't have to do a private float check ride in commercial. After you get your commercial, you just get your commercial float rating.
So it's the same check ride before and after. But if you're going for commercial and you do a private float check ride when you're private, then in order to exercise float privileges, you must do the exact same check ride again as a commercial pilot. So it's way more efficient cost effective to get your commercially rated and then go back and get your.
Well, I mean, so that's the thing though, like everybody has their own path. I would never advocate, like a lot of people say, oh, you have to do it this way, you got to become a CFI. For me, that was the part that I was probably least strategic about. I wasn't at that point, I think, seriously thinking that that it was in the cards for me to become a professional pilot. You know, because like what with the whole 1,500 hour rule becoming a thing, and I was like, oh, you know, I'll probably never do this. But I was just enjoying hey, I'm a private pilot now. Let's see all the things I can do in aviation. And I lived at that time in Queen Anne, and I had a view of Lake Union, and I saw all the float planes like Kenmore Air and stuff. I was like, man, that sounds awesome. And I kind of looked into it. I was like, this sounds like really fun. I think it's something I can do. So that's why I decided to do my private airplane single engine C check ride then. So,
to be clear, I'm not ragging on you for getting it as a private pilot. What I'm saying is this one facet. If you want it as a commercial privilege, the most cost effective way. But by all means, if that's what inspires you and you want to go and get and whatever keeps you going in aviation, if you just want a new challenge, or float plane flying is so fucking cool, dude.
That's where I was at, you know. I was like, oh, okay, this is another thing I can do now. So I did that, and so then after that, that's when I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I should probably learn how to fly in the clouds. I should probably get my instrument rating.
Nice. And so you did private single engine land, private single engine C, and then commercial
instrument.
I'm sorry, and then instrument. And so what you said you took a little bit of time off just to.
Well, not time off. I was working, but I was just enjoying flying around, flying to the islands and stuff. And, getting the. Probably more like $150 hamburger when they talk about the $100 hamburger. I would fly from Harvey Field to Friday Harbor. That was a 50-mile cross country. So it's a good way to build cross country. Night, I would go take off from Payne Field, fly to Harvey Field, which is 5 miles away. Get a milkshake there, wait until it was night.
Nice.
Fly over to Whidbey, Friday Harbor to get a nice night cross country.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So once you got through your instrument in your commercial, how did you build time to get to I'm assuming it was still 500 hours at U.
So after I got my commercial, I went down to SoCal. I worked another engineering job. I got my multi-engine at that time as well. And then after that, a buddy that was in a carpool a van pool actually that I started from downtown Seattle to Boeing in Everett, because I don't know, there wasn't like a good van pool. Like the van pools were from everywhere else. So I organized a van pool, and he was one of the people in that, and we stayed in touch, and he was like, hey, I just got hired as an aerial survey pilot. It's awesome. I'm like, really? Like, don't you just like fly lines all day? And he told me about it. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. So you get your own airplane, and it's basically yours to manage for the season. You're basically flying to like instrument tolerances, and there's like a lot of like different flight planning that you do, and like working with ATC and sequencing what order you do the flight plans based on like what direction they are, what altitude they're at. So it sounded pretty cool. So I put in my application, I got hired. The company was in upstate New York. So I went out there. For those of you who don't know, the aerial survey season is approximately from like Halloween to, I guess, Memorial Day every year.
So over the winter.
Yes.
So,
and the reason,
why? Yeah.
The reason for that is because the leaves are falling in the fall, and so they want something about the way that computer algorithms work. When there's a whole bunch of leaves, like a bushy tree looks like ground to the algorithm. So they can see, the image can see through the tree, and it can work out what is ground and what is tree, and make the elevation, the topographical map.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so they want the leaves off the trees, but of course snow is also kind of an issue too.
Yeah.
So if there's too much snow in the area, you could get like a snow glint, and then there's different, like also like what you could have at certain angles of the sun, you could have glint off of the water. That's also not good.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like really cool environmental things to consider. So you're looking at like all the webcams and all the weather and like cloud reports, you know, things about like the imagery window as far as like sun angle. I think it was like 8 degrees or something like above the horizon. So yeah, I mean, it kind of appealed to my technical nature, and it was good. It was really good experience as far as landing at unfamiliar airports, like working with ATC, flying to tight tolerances like all day. It was basically like instrument flying, but like in visual conditions. Yeah, it was cool. It was a lot of fun.
So flying to instrument standards in visual conditions provide it is kind of an unusual experience, because you're like, well, it's easiest if I just look inside, but I'm also responsible for looking outside.
Yep.
And so yeah, I think it's a higher workload than
it is
if you're hand flying in the clouds in IMC.
Yeah, it was high workload, but it was a lot of fun. Like, so yeah, hand flying. You had this light bar thing which told you which when you were within the 6 degrees of freedom, plus speed, plus ground speed. So you couldn't be too fast. You couldn't have too much yaw. You couldn't have too much bank.
Interesting.
Yeah, you couldn't be too high, too low, too lateral. And so it would tell you, like, it would be like steer right, go up, go down, and then on the computer you would see the flight plan, and you would see like if it was yellow you missed the point, if it was green you got it. So yeah, no, it was really cool. But yeah, definitely scanning outside.
Yeah.
I remember one project out in Little Rock. We were on with ATC, and we were getting flight following, but they just kept launching commercial airliners at us. So good old CLIT, right?
Oh yeah.
Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you had to stay vigilant, even though ATC was looking out for
radar
you.
services.
Yeah.
They're technically not obliged to provide that separation because you're VFR.
Right.
So, how long did you do that?
Oh, I did that I worked for 2 different operators. Most of the season was for the one operator out of upstate New York, and then I guess the third of the season, the last third of the season was for an operator out of just north of New Orleans. So 2 different operators, but basically almost the whole year. It was from October to September.
Nice.
Yeah. So depending on the operator you fly for and what contracts you have. Usually the imagery is over by May, but sometimes it can go like deep into September. It kind of peters out by then. I'm not sure why it doesn't go all year, but some people have the contracts for you to fly all year.
Interesting. And so this aerial survey is what provides like the data for Google Earth? And
yeah, sometimes it's Google Earth. I heard somebody was working for Bing when that was a thing.
Yeah.
Microsoft Bing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but yeah, it's for providers like that. It's for counties who are trying to flesh out their databases for land use and permitting. Also for oil companies, basically whoever wants to purchase the data.
Gotcha.
For any sort of permitting or construction purpose. And also I talked about the county. One way they use that data is for emergency response. And they need accurate topographical maps. And sometimes the best way to get that is for a little tiny, relatively cheap airplane to be flying lawnmower patterns over the earth.
That's awesome. So they're figuring out like, okay, if all the roads go down like Hurricane Helene in Asheville, they're like, how can we get in? Because that whole, like that's where I did all my flight training, and a lot of my friends are there and were impacted by that. And it was like, well, several of the major road systems are down. So how are you going to get through that mountainous terrain?
And we did some imagery over Joplin, Missouri, and this was about a year, maybe two, after they had that gigantic tornado that tore through there. And so we still had a contract there. I think I was guessing, they wanted another round of imagery to see, how the rebuilding was going, and what's the state of the infrastructure now? Like a year or two later. And I talked about the foliage before. So it is advantageous if most of the leaves are off, but they want to know like where the foliage is.
Oh, interesting.
As well. Yeah.
And so they use that to predict where there could be issues with aerial imaging?
Part of that, and like one of the consumers I've heard are like weather services as well, because the presence of foliage affects like how the humidity, and like the aspiration of
because the trees retain and transmit moisture
and oxygen too.
At a different rate than the ground or the water. That's
and shade and like thermal effects on the ground. Yeah, so there's all sorts of usage, and I don't know how valuable it is, but I know it must be very valuable, because I was always told by my boss, like, if there's a reasonable chance that you're going to get some imagery, like, go out and try, even if there's going to be clouds underneath, just see what you can get. So like, okay, I would have thought that if it doesn't seem like there's a reasonable chance that we'll get good shots that are processable by the computer, we wouldn't fly. He's like, no, fly. So this imagery is probably extremely valuable. That's my take on it.
And so this is all visual imagery?
It is, yeah. It's visual imagery that the computer has the ability to stitch it into a 3D topographical map of the Earth. Yeah.
And is it combined with any other sort of like LiDAR or?
Possibly. The way they structure the well, first off, let me talk about the airplane a little bit. There's 5 cameras and 3 camera hole cutouts. So there's one giant cutout in the bottom and 2 cutouts on the side. So there's one orthographic camera straight down, and then there were 4 oblique cameras. And so they'd be pointed at an angle first off. So I forget how far apart the grids were structured, but we would fly these patterns, and because of the oblique cameras, they would be able to kind of look sideways a little bit, and it would know based on the turn of the airplane like what you were actually pointing at. So they would the computer program had the ability to kind of stitch this together based on like the heading and the course and the roll and the yaw. Yeah, it was really cool.
So I've seen the product in Google Earth, and you like zoom down and it's like street level fine, the imagery. And I've wondered about that. I was like, well, that must have taken like pictures from a satellite.
I don't know if it was Google Earth, by the way, but yeah.
But I mean, so presumably Google Earth is supplemented with aerial survey data.
Yeah.
And like the quality of the 3D objects is absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot more sense with 5 different cameras.
And that's the thing, like
angles.
when you have a satellite up in low Earth orbit, 120 kilometers, whatever that is, you're not going to get the angle that you need to like see it from the side and get like the 3D view of it.
Exactly.
So having a low flying aircraft of some sort is actually very advantageous for getting the shots from the side, because getting that angle way up in space is going to be a lot lower resolution.
Right, because you're shooting a lot further.
Yeah, and you might have to go, I mean, there's an increased chance that you'll be shooting through clouds from that far away as well. So it just works out that the low altitude imagery is more accurate for creating the 3D maps. Now you might wonder, is this work going away due to drones and UAVs?
I have wondered about the application, because it seems like situations like that and like pipeline surveys, which I used to do. Yeah. Like that seems like an absolutely perfect use case for drones. I mean, just send it out and you've got almost no operating cost.
Well, I mean, I've been hearing about that since for a dozen years now, and back then they said that drones are going to be doing this work. So what I've heard, and this might be less of a case now, but it seems that human pilots, at least for now, have a greater ability to be on station and get a higher degree of accuracy in changing like gusty wind conditions or whatnot, and actually get imagery that's good enough for the computer to use to stitch it into the topographical map. Than the drones. They're getting better all the time. Right. But the work is never really going to go away. And of course, the larger airplane operated by a human operator has more range. Not as much of a line of sight issue. But the way a lot of the drones work is that if they get beyond line of sight, then they have a command, okay, we don't want to get out of radio coverage, and they'll do like an autopilot thing where they just return to the operator. So you don't really have the line of sight concern. It's a bigger airplane, naturally has more range. There's just more flexibility, I think, and just more ability to do more accurate shooting for now.
Yeah. And so what kind of platform are you flying?
It was a 172. Perfect. With camera hole cutouts,
Perfect. And how long were these missions? 4 hours?
These missions were, I mean, they were about, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. It just, depending on, when you wanted to take a lunch break versus, where you think you would be in each pattern, and like how far away was the next plan. You would kind of work it all out in the morning and be like, okay, I'm gonna do this grid, and then the 3 grids next to that, and then maybe I'll move over here and do these other grids, and but in about 2 hours the winds aloft are gonna shift, so I should probably switch over to these grids, which are 30 degrees to the original grids, right? So better for the winds.
So you're doing a lot of like single pilot flight planning, like down to some pretty precise detail as a pretty young pilot.
Yeah, but it's not as serious as it sounds. You really just have to get close enough. You really just need to have a good enough idea of if you're going to be within the crosswind limit that the computer will accept.
Oh, yeah.
For and you after a while you kind of got a sense of what that was, and okay, if I do this grid that's in this direction and it's like 20 degrees from the wind at this sort of magnitude, with this crosswind component, would the computer take that? You sort of got a sense of what that was. And one of the things I learned is that I could make the computer accept a point by doing a crab and a dip.
Nice.
And it was okay. But then I found out later that actually that was opening up too much of a gap between the grids.
Interesting.
So really it was only supposed to be a roll or a crab. So each one of those within the limits, but cheating by doing a compound thing to make the computer accept it. So there's some things that you learn as you do this work. And yeah, it was really fun. But at the end of the season, it was time to move on.
So how many hours? About how many hours did you have coming out of that?
Oh man, that is a great job for building time. I think. Yeah. I don't know why more people don't. I feel like when I talk to a lot of young pilots, they don't know about aerial survey.
Yeah.
It's so underrated. It's so much fun. You travel around like all of the country, basically wherever the work is, wherever the flight plans are. You're emailed a PDF and you go to that state and you work with ATC and you make it happen. You throw your duffel bag in the plane and you mount up and ride. It's really cool. You get a lot of experience with cross-country flight planning, day-night, IFR, VFR. Obviously not in icing conditions, but not with this plane. But you flight plan out to a location and you make it happen. And so it's quality flight time, and you build a lot of it. It's Part 91. Obviously, you have to learn what your limits are, but you can fly all day and then fly through a lot of the night too, and get nighttime as long as you're managing your sleep. You can build so much time on this job. I ended up building about I think 750 in the season. I know a lot of people that have flown like 900 hours in the season.
Nice.
Which is a total game changer if you are trying to get to 1,500 hours, right? So, I hear about a lot of people like, okay, well, I'm going to flight instruct, and don't get me wrong, flight instruction is a great experience, because especially CRM experience, because you're constantly trying to teach somebody something, but you have to let them learn to make their own mistakes. And so really it kind of turns into you're flying with somebody that you try not to have them kill you and them. So it's like, what is that limit? What do you say? So that's great experience, but you don't get the cross-country time, and you don't get like the aircraft that you manage, finding hangaring and fueling and arranging maintenance when it needs it. So I can't say enough good things about it. Like if there was more work there with like larger airplanes, I might still be doing that, but it seemed like a lot of the jobs were like Cessna 172, So I just kind of wanted to move on to something bigger after that. But the job is so much fun. It pays better than you think, and you build a hell of a lot of time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We talk a lot on this podcast about different paths, because hey, get to 250 hours, get your CFI, and then build to 15. The traditional 141 model is not the right choice for everybody, and it wasn't the right choice for me. I never got my CFI. I plan to eventually, but
oh really? I thought I was the only one. I don't have my CFI either.
Yeah. No. I built time, and then I came up to Alaska, or I went up to Alaska. I'm down in Texas at the moment, but I didn't feel as if at 250 hours I had anything to offer anybody. And part of that, I think, was because I had such a good flight instructor. My flight instructor was a retired F4 pilot who'd gotten his 65, his age 65 retirement at the airlines. Like, he was a super high time pilot, and I went in to Part 61 school, and I was like, yeah, this is how all flight instructors are, right? And it was a while before I realized that, like, no, that is not the average flight instructor. So it was like, my thought was like, what, why in the world would I teach at 250 hours? Not that that's not valuable, but I do believe that learning from a higher time pilot has huge advantages. And so for the people who go into it mid-career or later in their career as a CFI, just to have some fun and teach the next generation, I think that offers a lot more to the next generation.
But how are we going to pay those people what they deserve, though?
CFIs?
Well, I mean, how are you going to pay somebody who's so high time and is, end of his career and has a whole bunch of lessons learned that he can teach young pilots? Like, what you need to pay that person is more than probably a new pilot can afford.
Okay, so a couple of things here. That's a fantastic question. You're on point with that. That, first of all, I think the root cause of this, the problem with the cost of flight training, is the FAA's complete disregard for any innovation. They have throttled innovation in GA to a degree that's cartoonish. All flight schools are running 1974 172s, and that are running heavily leaded gas. I mean, the amount of lead that you need for an aircraft engine is 100 times more than what was ever put in cars. And they're burning, 7 gallons an hour or something like that for a 172 of gas that costs $5, $7, $10 a gallon. And so if the FAA releases its stranglehold on innovation, then the cost of flight training, what people should be learning is the equivalent of a 1998 Toyota Camry. And so, something that's reliable, high mileage maybe, but, a good plane. But what we've got are classic airplanes.
So how's it going to release its stranglehold on innovation?
So just letting go of the first thing, and we need to I need to get off of this tangent very quickly, but I'll make it short. Oh,
it's your podcast, your tangent.
So the first thing is the way that they track parts is they have a signature required at every stop, and it's like that makes the cost of repair just astronomical, whereas cars do. Cars track in batches. Car parts are tracked in batches, so it's like instead of individuals putting their name on every part at every process, it's like this part was made at this time and these people were working, and here's the part. And you can track it that way, and that creates a group of parts that, okay, maybe they're not all bad, but we can narrow it down to this group of 1,000 parts instead of this group of 7 parts. And so once you do, Honda that makes an internal combustion engine for everything tried to make an internal combustion engine for airplanes, and they couldn't get through the FAA's red tape. So that's not a canary in a coal mine. I don't know what is. And then so you drop the cost on the airplane side, and then you get rid of the 1,500-hour rule, which was based on an accident that had pilots that had no less than 2,400 hours.
Yeah, that is very interesting. That's that is kind of funny, because like I think one of the good things that came out of a terrible situation was a lot more stringent fatigue and rest and duty rules. However, none of the accidents, none of the pilots involved in the accident, I believe, had any fewer than 3,000 hours.
Yeah, it was
something like that.
It wouldn't have changed any. That ruling would have saved no one.
Right.
And so you get rid of that. You get people in the airplane that they will fly for the rest of their career at 250 or 500 hours, and then they stop building these bad habits that instructors at 121s have to correct. And then you get rid of this artificial demand for time building through flight instructing. So you drop the cost of the airplanes, you drop the artificial demand for flight instructors, and then you have a larger budget to pay people more. And plus,
well, hold on. I don't know, where would the larger budget to pay flight instructors more come from? So you lower the demand for flight instructors. How does that raise their pay?
So you lower the demand for for building flight time through flight instructors. So you have fewer people who are doing it just to build time, which I think is a recipe for disaster. And there have been there's been more than one accident that's been cited in that. Instructors who were just completely disinterested. And so then you have a suppression of the cost to operate, and then you can afford, the average person can afford to pay a flight instructor more, because right now the cost for a 172 and a flight instructor is over $200 an hour, which is absolutely preposterous. It should be something.
So how do you connect okay, so right, so if without the 1,500-hour rule, there wouldn't be so much of a need for flight instructors to build more time.
Right.
However, you would still need to pay the flight instructors that are there not to build time more money to keep them there, to keep the good ones there. So how do you pay them more money while still keeping flight while still keeping flight training costs down?
So so you have the suppression of the cost on the operation side, and then you have an increase in demand compared to supply for flight instructors. So right now, especially right now, we're seeing where the airlines have dropped off in hiring substantially. You have a phenomenal increase in supply for flight instructors.
Yeah.
But if you take that out, and now you have people who don't have to build time through flight instructors, and you have a lower cost to operate the airplanes, then if you want to get flight instruction, it's more of a free market. It's not artificially regulated.
Oh, so you're proposing that the reduction in cost in flight instruction comes from the reduction in cost in operating the airplanes due to lower regulatory costs. Okay, and lower maintenance costs and whatnot.
So then it selects for people who want to flight instruct. And then you get a higher quality flight instructor on average. It's not going to be across the board. It's not going to be everybody, but it's going to be the average flight instructor wants to be there rather than the average flight instructor wants to build time. So, because my experience with a flight instructor was just so phenomenal, and that is not average.
Yeah.
And how were your flight instructors?
I kind of alluded to it. My flight instructor was not like was an older lady who was not trying to go to the airlines. Like she was already flying like commemorative Air Force.
Yeah.
She had a steady career that she didn't want to leave to go to aviation.
Yeah.
She was just instructing on the side. So it worked out really well. Like she was in it because she liked teaching. She liked spreading the good news. She liked having students that were killing it. She liked passing on the knowledge.
That's awesome.
And so she well, it's not a good answer because she was still not making very much money instructing because she was doing it on the side. So she's kind of doing it for the love of the game.
That, I think.
And so that's not the answer for everybody though, because some people want to flight instruct and that's what they want to do. So you got to actually pay those people more.
I don't necessarily agree that you have to. That you have to pay flight instructors enough for that to be their only job, because the best flight instructors are not going to need to flight instruct. I mean, almost by definition, because the best flight instructors are almost always going to be aviators with a sufficient amount of time to make them venerable in the aviation job market. So it's almost certainly going to be that the best flight instructors are doing it for the love of the game and not for the money. Like when I get my flight instructor certificates, I plan on doing it, maybe 10 years down the road, maybe 5, something like that. But it's not going to be to pay the bills. It's going to be because I want to help the next generation along, because I want to share my excitement for aviation with somebody else. And so I don't necessarily agree that it has to be career level pay. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. Yeah, I agree that I agree that to be a really good flight instructor, you can't have only flight instructed.
Yeah, that's.
However, it might be nice in some way for somebody who's done enough other flying to equip them to really be the master flight instructor, that there's some way to pay that person or those people, that subset of people, that a livable wage, so that there's a core of really expert flight instruction out there, and maybe they can lead the way for all of the other flight instructors who for whom it's a second job. But I mean that's a good point. I mean, it almost seems like it is a necessity to at least for a while do something that's not flight instruction in order to build that experience and know what you're talking about, instead of just instructing from the curriculum. You can then instruct from the curriculum and instruct from your flight experience. So yeah, I agree. I just don't think it should be necessary for all flight instructors, for it to be a second job for all flight instructors.
I'm not saying it should be necessary, but I'm saying with my limited experience as a student pilot, that was a fantastic experience. So whatever paves the way for that.
I agree. I mean, it was the same for me. It sounds like we had very similar flight instructors. So I would cheers to that, but I seem to be out of wine.
That's okay.
I seem to be out of
do we need a top up?
Boxed cab sauv.
We need a top up here?
I think so. Oh, thank you, John.
Of course. Cheers.
Cheers to that. Yeah.
So, if somebody's going in for their first, their discovery flight, and they're looking, they need a litmus test. They don't want to slap the 500 down on the counter before they know, like, this person's going to, I can reasonably expect this person to give me good flight instruction. What would you say to them? What would you say to that person?
I assume you're talking about the dynamic of instructors connecting with students, yeah?
Oh, well, that and the dynamic, which is vital, because I have...
a caveat, neither myself nor John are flight instructors.
Okay, yes. Yes. So this perspective is from the students. From the student perspective. So as someone who's gotten several qualifications over the years, I have had the opportunity to get them from people that I did not click with. Right. And so, like,
every pilot has had to learn from a flight instructor. So our opinion is valid.
Exactly. So what would you say, like, for that? I think there are two facets that are pretty vital, which is the click, which is subjective. It's wholly subjective. It's like, dude, just whatever you vibe with, and then there's the wisdom. Yeah. Like, so how did you go about it? Did you have any idea, or did you get lucky like I did? And what would you say to the next generation?
I mean, what I was looking for personally, in my experience, was really all I can talk to, is I was looking for someone, I mean, not necessarily looking for someone that I was too buddy-buddy with, but someone where I just kind of liked their communication style. It's like, oh, you're explaining it like that. There you go. Like, I get it. Really about the match of the communication and learning styles is super important. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to know that until you're a couple lessons deep. I feel like I got lucky as well. I don't personally think I'm a good judge of character, personalities, but I did feel like I clicked with this person as, a primary flight instructor. Also, I had talked to some other people who had flown with them as well.
Fantastic.
People that were, engineers like me, kind of thought like I did. And so this person was recommended to me from them. And I think it worked out. So if you know other people who have flown with them, who you trust and who think like you, not just your friends, but like actually think like you, and then also you get a good vibe about the way they're explaining stuff versus the way that you learn. And by the way, I mean, nobody pops out of their mother's womb as a pilot. Some people say they do. That's a lie. That's not true. Everybody learns how to be a pilot. Nobody's born with wings, and so you all have to learn it. So it's really about your learning style.
So you've touched on a facet that I don't know if we've covered before, which is getting recommendations from people who not only you trust, but who are similar in the way that you view the world.
I would push back on that. It's kind of like what I said. I don't really need to be buddy-buddy with this person. I actually prefer that we don't really click as like friends. Because that can kind of be like a weird dynamic. Like, I want an instructor. I don't want a friend. And I don't need them to view the world the same that I do. I just need my learning style to align with how they're teaching.
Oh, well, so I was using poor wording there.
I'll jump all over you.
No, so like you coming from engineering, you relied on the recommendations of other engineers.
Other engineers who also learned to fly.
Perfect. So whereas someone who's maybe more on the soft skills side, could use explanations and recommendations from people who came from a more soft skills background than 1 + 1 = 2 and whatever it is in trigonometry.
Yeah. Well, that would be, in trigonometry, it would be 1 and 1 is √2. little engineering joke for you there.
I scraped by all of my math classes.
So 1 + 1 is not 2, but 1 squared + 1 squared is 2 squared, I think. But the hypotenuse is √2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know. I'll keep that in mind on my descent profiles. So you went out, you looked at a bunch of trees for 1,000 hours, and then you go out to Ute?
Yeah, and so, after having a bunch of fun as an aerial survey pilot, like I said, like being in parts of the country that, not that I wouldn't go to, I just wouldn't have an opportunity. I'm there for work. I don't have an infinite budget to travel, but hey, I'm traveling for work constantly as an aerial survey pilot. So tons of fun. So wrap that up. Okay, what am I going to do now? So it's like, okay, Part 135 VFR. All right. By the way, I did look for Part 135 IFR jobs as well, and they needed a little bit more. I mean, a lot of the places I was looking for, they needed a lot more multi-time.
Yep.
I also didn't have the nighttime that they needed.
Yeah.
And so that it's kind of a weird thing.
Hours
right. So
like that. Yeah.
I didn't have 100 hours nighttime at that point. And curiously enough, by the time, just kind of fast forward here, after I flew Part 135 on the gravel, not in the bush, in the gravel.
Yeah.
After I flew in the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta for Part 135 VFR, I actually jumped straight to 121 because the 121 requirement is 75 hours of night. So I always did want to fly the Part 135 IFR, but I never had the nighttime to do it.
Really?
You know, and I built my nighttime up there in the winter flying Part 135 VFR. So I just got to the nighttime that I needed to fly Part 121, and by the time I was in the 121 world, I still didn't have the nighttime I needed to fly Part 135 IFR.
That's awesome.
So it's like, okay, you talk about, regulatory reform. I wanted to fly Part 135 IFR. It's probably better skills. I say that, but Part 135 VFR up in Alaska is a little bit nutty because it's all aeronautical decision making. You have like a 200-foot altitude band that you're working with, and you're constantly turning back to stay out of the IFR conditions. So, there's a lot of aeronautical decision making there, but I would posit that for a professional airline pilot or any professional pilot, IFR skills are very important. So, I was trying to get into Part 135 IFR. I did have the total time. I just didn't have the night time to do that. So that's kind of how I ended up flying Part 135 VFR in Alaska. I think I had like I think it was like 1,000-ish something hours at that point. 500 hours I think is the legal VFR, Part 135 VFR total hours minimums that they look for. But yeah, I was up there like 1,000 hours ish, and I built like 500, 600 more hours. And then I had a buddy who was like, well, you should probably come to Horizon. They're hiring right now.
Nice.
Yeah, so I hired after flying in not the bush, in the tundra.
In the tundra.
For about 500 hours. That was how I built like the last third of my time.
Yeah.
And that was fun as well. It's cold up there, but the people's hearts are very warm.
Yeah.
You can't be an asshole in the bush.
No.
If you're an asshole, you die.
Dude, I saw it over and over again with pilots who just come in.
A wolf will get you, or a muskox will get you, or something, or you'll freeze.
Yeah. Dude, I saw people come up with a bad attitude or just a cocky attitude over and over again at different operators, and it was like the locals are going to blacklist you, and they're going to tell the operator.
Yeah.
They're going to be there, and you're going to have fewer and fewer people who want to fly with you.
Yeah.
And then your co-pilot, or your co-workers are not going to want to be around you. You're going to get a reputation real quick.
Yeah. I have really fond memories of that time up in Bethel for you, like not just the development of my decision-making skills, but like also just like the teamwork that we had on the team, and just like everybody helping each other get all the airplanes out of the hangar in the morning to go launch off and fly the soda pop and chips out to the villages.
Chips and pop.
And like fuel up all the airplanes in the conga line. And do the same thing in the evening, getting all the airplanes in with like inches to spare.
Oh yeah.
Without scraping any of them. And like, but more than that, just like the warmth of the villagers, how much they respected us, how much they relied on us. It's great. It's a great feeling to be an essential part of their community. And we've talked before about, going on a snow machine, which they call it out there, because it makes snow, right? It blows the snow. But going on a snow machine is not always the safest in all conditions, because the conditions could just be too hazardous. It could be too cold, or it could be during freeze up of the river or the lake, or thaw out, and you're not quite sure about the condition of the ice. And so aviation in Alaska is very essential for kind of just going over all those hazardous conditions, and hopefully the landing on an ice-covered runway is not the hazardous condition that awaits you.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
So I mean, we always left tons of margin in our landing, or I did at least. But I mean, that was the other thing that it kind of taught me, is that no matter what everybody else is doing, if another person says, oh, I can do this, it's like, okay, but what are my personal minimums? Have I earned the right to erode the margin of safety on this particular combination of weather conditions, runway conditions, passenger loading, and airplane status? Have I earned that right? Do I really know what I'm getting into here? So my default as a nerdy engineer is, let's go by the book and let's be very conservative. And I think that really served me very well up there. I turned back a lot. Yeah. And I think that was a good choice. I think I'm a good pilot. I think I'm a good stick, but I kind of erred on the side of conservatism, especially up there, especially when I had colleagues who like went off the taxiways, off the runways and stuff. And I just didn't want to be one of those guys to try to be the hero and try to get the soda pop and chips out to the village. Yep.
So one thing that when I was climbing, I would like work on a certain climb, and I'd get it, and then it would be stuck in my head as like, I can climb that, and I would like go on and climb some other stuff, and then I'd be back at that climb someday, a couple weeks later, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I can climb this.
Are you talking about an airplane climb or a rock climb?
Sorry, rock climbing. Rock climbing. Okay. Yeah. So I'm a little off subject, but I'm bringing it back, I promise. So I'd go up and I'd try to climb it again, and I'd get shut down. Yeah. And I'd be like, oh, I remember this happened like 2 or 3 times. It took me a little bit to learn. Like, that was the culmination of a lot of work and a lot of luck. And so it's like, I'm very careful about that in flying. It's like, Yes, I got in there last time it was gusting that much across the runway, but that's not the given. It's not like I can just repeat that indefinitely.
Right.
I dipped into my luck bag and I took a little bit out of it during that landing, and I made it through, but that doesn't mean I have to do it again. And you know, especially if somebody else just did it just now, that doesn't mean I have to try either. So like learning where you need to say no and you know, you hear the AOPA talk about this all the time, but it's such a hard thing to suss out. You really have to get out there and experience, push the boundaries a little bit, and then say, okay, let me see how I could, let me talk to some people, see how I could mitigate that risk. Maybe there's a technique, or maybe I just need to avoid that in the future.
Yeah, and it could be that they might, in their experience, know a trick that you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool when it happens, when you learn a trick where you can kind of, okay, you have another tool in your tool bag where you can use that to take on a little bit more risk, not a lot more, and not compounding risk factors all at once, but you just kind of inch into the risk a little bit in a smart way, because you have that tool now, or you've learned something on the flight where you almost died. Now you have that, so it's like, yeah, you're not going to try that thing the same way, but you're gonna try it with the new trick that the salty guy taught you, or Mother Nature taught you, or Father Time taught you. You know, all smacking you. You know.
So that, you're absolutely right there. Like the idea of compounding risk, and it's something that is super easy to forget. You're like, okay, I'm a little tired. That's okay. I'll pop in a Zen. The autopilot isn't great at approaches, so I'll just hand shoot this. And this has a 30 knot gust factor across. Well, any one of those is bad, but all three of them, and I certainly tend to have the memory of a goldfish when it comes to the risk factors if I'm not proactive about it. And if it gets to that point where I've stacked, three risks on top of each other, whatever they are, then like, hey, look, we need to pull back here. But if I get the chance to use a technique, one was differential thrust, and I didn't use that for a long time, and my buddy who has quite a bit more time than me was like, dude, just do it on a crosswind landing. Differential thrust in the Beechcrafter, great. And on a good weather day with a steady crosswind, it's awesome. And then you have another tool. And so, but you can't just throw that in and expect it to bail you out when you've stacked several different risks on top of the other. And I think that's what you're getting at, that coming from the perspective of an engineer, as your margin of safety, you've started to erode what you had built in, what the FAA had built in, and then you're dipping into luck.
Yeah, you don't always. The other thing is, you don't always know what it feels like as a pilot to stack those risks on top of each other. You don't know how you're going to respond to that, and you don't even know what the actual effect on the flight will be all the time. So you might think you understand how the lumps stack on top of each other, but you don't know. You might think it looks like a gerbil hiding under the blanket, but actually it's a bunny. You don't know what it actually looks like in reality for those risks to stack on top of each other till it happens. And that's not the right time. You don't want to get down into the flare to figure out exactly how all those risks have stacked onto. But as we know, as long as you're flying, you're still above the ground, you're still safe, and you can always go around.
Almost always. I'll say
you
that.
You can most always go, don't force the landing.
That's true.
No matter what happens, risks stack up. All right, go around.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the risks are stacking up and you think you have to land. You do not.
Yeah.
Unless you don't have an engine.
Yeah, fair enough. So speaking of which, have you had any emergencies?
You know, I have had situations where the engine was acting up, but I have never yet had an engine failure.
Okay. Any other sticky situations?
I mean, I've had situations, especially, flying out in the gravel strips of southwestern Alaska, where I've had to turn back. Mm-hmm. I was not happy with the amount of altitude I had remaining.
Yeah.
And, the ice that I knew was there in the clouds, and the people that they wanted me to haul on one load. So I've had to leave people, come back later and get them, obviously.
Or weight consideration? Or
yeah, it just would have put me like overweight, or people really wanted to get to like a family reunion, but the weather was not going to allow it, like legally or safely.
Yeah.
And so, I've had to turn back in those situations, but I've been really lucky in that I haven't had like a true, like legit emergency scenario. Like I've declared actually the only time I declared an emergency was when I had a fuel smell in the cabin.
Yeah.
It sort of smelled like fuel to me, and it smelled like fuel to the flight attendants. However, and so we declared an emergency. We got on the ground, we had the fire trucks and everything, and what it turned out to be at the end of the day was somebody had some really, really pungent perfume in their bag, and it smelled, I swear to God, to this day, it smelled just like jet fuel. It was insane. I swear to God.
Because
no,
I would love to dab a little jet fuel on before taking my wife out for dinner.
Yeah, and as soon as they exited, the flight attendants were like, "Oh yeah, no," we talked to them. They had something in their bag, and that was the smell.
Dude, that's freaking wild.
And I mean, unless they're traveling with like a vial of jet fuel in their freaking bag, Anyway, so I mean, I still think
this is on a Q400.
No, this is on an E175. I still think that I made the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
But it's like everybody, myself, the first officer. I was captain at this point too, and the flight attendants, they're all like, dude, it's a fuel smell. And we smelled it too. I was like, okay, first of all, who produces perfume that smells like jet fuel? And second of all, if they do, why are you bringing it on an airplane? I mean, they probably didn't know that.
No.
But man, that was...
They bought it at Burlington.
I thought that was... So I've been lucky in that I have not actually had a legit engine failure or legit emergency. I've had drunk passengers on board.
Yeah.
I've had
in a sled or in a
again in a twin engine turbofan airliner. I've had ill patients.
Really?
I have had to have somebody removed by law enforcement officers. But I haven't had a legit in-flight emergency. And I'd like to thank you, John, for jinxing me.
Sorry, you've got some wood right there you can knock on.
I do not knock on wood because I believe in science. I don't believe in luck. You know me. I'm about science and the numbers.
Yeah, and science is jinxing is scientific.
Well, yes, but I also believe that there is a certain amount of luck that is allocated to somebody that cannot be explained by science.
Absolutely.
And I also believe that it it's uncanny how sometimes that luck runs out right after someone declares, "Oh, I've never had an emergency." And guess what? When we get up to Anchorage, the engine's probably going to fucking fail right now. Thanks a lot, John.
Okay, so two things. First of all, the Beechcrafts fly fine, single engine.
I know, this is what I've heard.
They are great. They will cruise right along. They'll burn half the fuel, and you'll go just a few knots slower.
You want to explain what we're going to be flying?
No.
Okay.
Beechcrafts.
Well, we're going to be kings of the air.
Kings of the air. Super kings of the air.
Super duper kings of the air.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, if it happens,
I know, we got auto feather, we got rudder boost, we got all this stuff. I know.
You come back for a second episode. We'll do a little bonus episode on scene, NTSB. I mean,
yeah.
Hopefully not. No.
Next episode, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold up.
So what's other than what you've got on the horizon with the training we're doing now? Do you have? First of all, do you have your own aircraft?
So I don't. I wish I did. I don't know if I'm ever going to own an airplane. I just don't know when it's ever going to make sense. Maybe that's like the nerdy part of me, but I feel like if I ever owned an airplane, I would want to like put it to work to make money for me, and I wouldn't want it to be just like a money sponge. I don't know. You know, I have goals that don't involve aviation, and like me and my family, and like I already fly professionally, and it would be really nice to have my own airplane. Absolutely, like 100%. But will it ever make sense? Will I ever do it? Ooh, it's looking rough right now. I don't know if I will. I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford it, honestly.
Yeah.
Just brass tacks. Like, I don't know. Like, I know people just go and do it, and I'm mad respect for those people, because it is a great privilege, great responsibility as well, to have your own airplane and be able to maintain it, get parts for it, and great freedom as well. I feel like if I had my own airplane, it would probably be something like the SR-22.
Yeah.
Something where it doesn't have, like, I probably wouldn't do the SR-22T, but something with like enough range to get me where I need to go with, like, you know, flight into known icing certified, so I could actually do instrument, but like actually do ice, like not moderate severe ice, but like light ice. So that probably something like that would be enough for me, or anything else that could do known ice, really. But I think that's probably, obviously, you know, like if I win the lottery or something, which I don't play, maybe I should, but
yeah, right.
You know, like I would set aside, like let's say I won like $100 million or something, I would immediately set aside like $80 million for maintenance, and then only buy like a $20 million plane, because my experience has shown me that like it's actually the maintenance and operation costs that are like the lion's share. So my whole thing is like, I'm not gonna buy an airplane until I can actually afford to like maintain and fly the thing, and really like the purchase price is just chump change compared to, you know, you don't want to be balling on a budget with an airplane. No. You know, you don't want to be airplane poor, because you're never going to be able to fly it. It's always going to be broken. You're never going to have parts for it. So my understanding of that is why I don't have an airplane.
Yeah, it is a huge cost to own. And when I owned an airplane, I definitely did put it to work. You know, I was doing my flight training, and I was flying it all the time. But if you're not putting it to use, then it really is just a luxury.
I've heard of people who have bought airplanes, and they've done all their flight training in it, and they've sold it for a profit. And I'm thinking to myself, that is just That's just chef's kiss right there. That is that is like the sage. That's the tarragon.
Yep.
That's all the spices right there. Because most people, I feel like, there's so much money that goes into an airplane, but if you can just have like a simple 70s vintage small airplane that you take good care of, that thing will probably appreciate in value.
Absolutely.
As we've talked about, because they have not invested the time and money to rewrite some of the regulations. And coming back to the regulatory environment that you were talking about, I think really what is needed is we've had decades upon decades of regulations that have been kind of stacked on top of each other, and it's kind of a winding mess right now. I think what we need is a complete rewrite. But not just like we shouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like,
right.
It comes from a good place. Like, we can't have people just doing whatever in the air, because the risks are tremendous, as we understand. And so we do need regulation in this business, but I agree that even the interpretation of the regulations is so time consuming, because they're very conflicting legal opinions, which we understand, but it's just
hopefully.
But it gets even more complicated when you're running your own operation and maintaining your own airplane, and it just drives the cost up. So I think there is a way to do it with a rewrite that I don't think people are really ready or willing to accomplish at this time.
Yeah, I can see that. Have you thought about like a flying club or something?
I am in a flying club right now. It doesn't really work as a club. It's really just renting an airplane from. But I've never really been in a true flying club. But that is a good option for many people.
If you're only flying a few hours a year and just want to take your family up once in a while, I think those are fantastic options. Yeah, you get access to a few cool planes in a lot of places, and the cost is usually a good bit better than renting. Michael Lapp.
John.
Thanks for coming on the Pirate.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.